And DK is definitely one of the players to watch for an event like this, coming from just a Western audience with minimal knowledge of the Asian scene. A lot of the players that we're just looking out for are ones that have been invited to these Korean invitationals before, and DK has been at a couple of them. I want to say he's gotten as far as second place. He might even have a win. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to check all of that beforehand, but definitely a player that, keeps getting invited to these larger events, is here for a reason. And I gotta say, SJW, across every region, it seems this seasonal, we had a lot more familiar faces than the one for Monuments of Power.
Yeah, are you talking specifically with the Asian one or across the board?
Across the board.
I agree. I was actually very happy with how many grassroots people actually made it into the NA seasonal specifically. And yeah, even this one, I recall doing DK with you previously. We casted the game I don't know if it was the last Asian seasonal or maybe it was the King of Games tournament. I forget what that other
King of Runeterra.
Yeah. So I do remember a DK. So it's good to see all these familiar faces even in the Asian seasonal here. But again, though, we got Lee Sin, and this is the deck I was talking about yesterday. I was excited to see. This is it's Dragons Boulevard. Is this Dragons? Is it, if Shyvana's in it, is it just dubbed Dragons and Aurelion Soul?
There's Dragon's Clutch. That is sort of my moniker for it being a dragon. If you're playing Dragon's Clutch and more than 2 targets, it's a dragon deck.
Okay, all right. So we have agreed this is Dragons. There is also 3 Screeching Dragons and 3 Eclipse Dragons. So.
As prolific a player as DK is, why the hell is he running Dragons?
That is a good. Why the hell would anybody run Dragons in all reality? This was surprising when we first did the deck list, Boulevard. This definitely stuck out to me. I was not expecting to see a deck like this, especially Shyvana. Shyvana just seems so like we had Renekton spoiled, right? It's like, man, rip Shyvana already, right? She just seems like such a basic champion, but. I don't know. We'll see if DK can have some success here versus the Lee Sin deck. I mean, I guess the idea here, especially with something like the Veiled Temple, if you're able to get some of these bigger, beefier units down faster than BBoom, if we're able to just flood the board with some of these dragons and go wide really early on, maybe the Lee Sin deck will have a problem with it. But problem is right now we're already on turn 5, and a 4/4 Fiora and a 3/2 Challenger on field is not really the type of aggression you're wanting early on. I think you want a little bit more than that.
I mean, it's kind of fine against Lee Sin, though, right? Especially looking at the hand of BBoom Teemo. He's not going to handle this particularly well. We can get down the Lee Sin next turn, but there is a hush on the side of DK as well as a single combat. We'll kind of have to see what we can get done for them, but I do like the addition of the Veiled Temple into a deck like this. I am, in theory, it's really cool that you're going to be able to get down multiple big dragons all in the same turn. Even doing something like Eclipse Dragon to get the mana back into a Screeching Dragon. My question is, how are we getting the mana back? Like, it seems really awkward to try and find that second card to play to actually get us the mana back to slam down multiple dragons in a turn.
Well, yeah, I mean, dragons in general are just kind of expensive, right? So, yeah, and so, like, you're playing expensive cards that you want to buff, but you need to play 2 expensive cards to buff the other expensive cards, so it's a little bit too much of a mana commitment, I think. So I kind of agree with you on that, Boulevard. But I mean, we'll see. We already have a 4/4 Fiora on board, so.
And then you look at this Guiding Touch and you say Boulevard obviously is going to cantrip his way to it. Let me stop you right there and inform you that not only is that the only Guiding Touch in the deck, there are no Pale Cascades.
Wow! Oh wow! There's no yeah. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, there's 3 Sharp Sights.
That seems like such a odd card to throw away just to get a little bit of mana back. And unless you have the spell mana banked, you're not even netting any mana in that regard. But here we do see the Lee Sin die, and things are looking extremely rough for BBoom Teemo. I mean, sometimes that's all it takes is, this Targon Demacia combination. You throw out this combat-based kill spell onto the Lee Sin, you hush away the barrier, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, you might be right. And obviously losing Lee Sin is kind of one of the ways that you lose playing the Lee Sin deck, or if you just don't draw Lee Sin, which we've seen plenty of times. Also see that Dragon's Rage in hand. If you guys weren't here yesterday when we were doing the top 16 and the top 32, Dragon's Rage is a one of finding its way into some of these Lee Sin decks here in the Asian seasonal. But in the meantime, Fury going to go ahead and pick up this Tail of the Dragon here. And this is what I was talking about earlier with DK strategy. We're able to start going wide here. We got these bigger, beefier, units, and there's really no way for BBoom to deal with a wider board like this. You know, there's no ruination. This isn't Shadow Isles. There's no way to easily clean up this board. And now that we've established this sort of field presence on the side of DK, I think it's going to be really, really hard for BBoom to come back from this.
Yeah, sort of all the bases are covered here. I mean, if you go for the single combat, BBoom has Notify. If you go for the concerted strike, they have Bastion. If you just hush the Sparklefly, though, that is the one that slips through the cracks, and this little butterfly is not going to be able to do what BBoom needs it to do. You're not going to be able to pillar on it, and we could even just see at the eye of this turn, it could be the Notify.
Yeah.
We could follow up with the concerted strike, throw out the Bastion. Okay, I'm finally safe. No, DK still has Hush Mana.
Yeah, and the fact that we have concerted strike and Hush Mana is pretty crazy. And oh wow, okay, I was just gonna say maybe that's why we don't see the Eclipse Dragon here, but I don't know, I'm not totally surprised with the Eclipse Dragon.
DK does still have to respect Sharp Sight.
Oh, wait, no. That was the second card. We were just talking about playing 2 larger cards to get that mana back, and in this case, it actually worked out. We spent the 7 mana on the Eclipse Dragon, and then now have the mana back to go ahead and hush the Sparklefly.
Yep.
Wow.
So not being able to throw down multiple big guys in a turn, but we do get, as you had mentioned, that hush back, and I think that BBoom's just dead on the open and can't do anything about that.
Yeah, what do we ever do? Like,
oh my god, we drew a 3rd Zenith Blade.
Not the greatest draws for BBoom. So DK gonna go up for the first game there. So let's bring it back on over to us. We'll get the second game queued up in just a second here. And that's a perfect example of why Lee Sin fails, I think, sometimes Boulevard is, and we talk about this all the time. Great deck when it works. Fantastic when you draw it. You get Zenith Blade. You get, the gems or whatever to buff them up to 10. You got the OTK. But when your opponent is actually able to deal with the Lee Sin early, or you just don't draw it, you're just shit out of luck at that point. It just doesn't work.
I would say that the reason we see so much Lee Sin is because it's actually probably on par with most tier 2 decks in games where you don't draw Lee Sin, but your deck still functions. You find, some other card to pillar on. I would say that Lee Sin is still like a very solid option at that point, and we even see a lot of decks kind of mimic that style with these Veiled Temple Aphelios decks. They just don't draw the Aphelios, they find a Zoe or some other thing. We've even seen Boxtopus be pillared on by some of these Aphelios Bilgewater players because the Veiled Temple and Astral Protection or something just lets you do that. It's a tried and true strategy because there's just not a lot of removal running around right now. But unfortunately for everybody here in the Asia seasonal, a lot more Hush than I think we got to see in pretty much any other region. A lot of these players just double Targon.
Yeah, and Targon, I mean, we've seen Targon be incredible lately. I mean, ever since Targon's been released, in all reality, it's just been at the forefront of the metagame. And then now you throw Aphelios into Targon, and yeah, I mean, we talked about this yesterday too. We have basically Aphelios being played with every champion at this point. Zoe, Twisted Fate, I mean, he's just all over the place. Diana, which is what we see here with Tom Kench. Thank you. The one that actually, took a little longer for people to figure out, but we got there.
I was gonna say DK is actually on the Tom Kench here.
Yep, Tom Kench Aphelios. Yeah, not for nothing, but and correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you did the NA seasonal too, but there was just a lot of Aphelios in general, right?
Yep, there were still 13 Aphelios Bilgewater decks coming into top 32, which honestly, I guess isn't that many, especially when you consider that there weren't a lot of non-Aphelios Bilgewater Aphelios decks. I would say he was maybe exactly half the tournament brought him.
Wow, that's insane. Half of the top 32, you're saying? Yeah, I mean that's a pretty large representation, and we're seeing the same thing here.
Compare that to the 25 Twisted Fate.
Yeah, Twisted Fate's been sticking around for quite some time as well, and Twisted Fate Fizz obviously is still pretty popular in this tournament. But I'd say it looks like Lee Sin was actually a little bit more popular than Twiz in the Asian seasonal, right?
I don't have the numbers, and because we are following the same players over and over again, it's hard to say. Yeah. But if I did get to take a look at the infographic, I would definitely not be surprised to see them very close to equal. Yeah,
I gotta agree with you. Definitely more Lee Sin here in the Asian seasonal than the NA seasonal, though. So, but written in the stars, gonna grab a buffed up Aphelios. That's gonna feel nice, especially with the 4/4 Aphelios already on board here for DK. So we very well might get into this whole who can build the bigger Aphelios early on in the game here with these Veiled Temples on board.
And I think that sort of benefits DK right now because you have the Boxtopus as well as the, the Pale Cascade. You can throw a gun onto it, but it looks like this is the time where BBoom Teemo is going to try and go for a kill onto DK's Aphelios, which I don't think works out if DK doesn't want it to, just because we have a Hush and BBoom Teemo doesn't. So even if we get out a Boxtopus and then still get, an Overwhelm gun onto it, get it up to that 5 attack, DK can just Hush it, put it back down to 3, and the Aphelios will survive, especially now with a second Veiled Temple on field. Going to get our Aphelios for DK up to a 6/6.
Man, these in Veiled Temple, we...
Oh yeah, but Boom's not running Boxtopus.
We talked about, this is... unfortunately, the Shadow Isles Invoke version. But, yeah, we've talked about Aphelios, Twisted Fate, Lee Sin, all these cards that we've seen a lot of. But Veiled Temple, man, this card's a beast. And we're seeing it in this matchup. Such a beast, in fact, that we're getting 2 of it played down, which there's not a whole lot of landmarks, I think, that you typically want sucking up 2 spots on board. Veiled Temple, one of them. It still doesn't feel that great. But, I don't know, man. +2, and 4 mana every turn. Feels like it's kind of worth it. All right, so Calibrum gonna get played onto this Boxtopus now as well, try to get that threat off the board. And like you said, Boxtopus is a pretty big threat here on the side of DK, being able to pull some of the units of BBoom, possibly even allow him to get rid of this 6/6 Aphelios now on board for BBoom. And Tom Kench off the top, that's definitely going to be a threat as well. I don't see any way for BBoom to deal with the Tom Kench yet, but I don't know. I honestly, with Aphelios being a 6/6, I don't know how much Tom Kench will actually be able to do right off the get.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward. You might have to pair the Hush with an Acquired Taste, in which case, it's definitely not out of the question that BBoom Teemo is going to be able to. I mean, actually, right here we could find. Yeah, we see the Tom Kench. We grab a Falling Comet. Very reasonable decision made there by BBoom Teemo.
Yeah, Falling Comet going to be pretty nice in this matchup. Like we said earlier, it's kind of the bigger Aphelios here, so Falling Comet going to be able to prevent that. No real way. Actually, do we know if DK is playing Bastion?
Oh wait, do we not know? No, we know, right?
I think I labeled it TF Aphelios, but it's actually Tom Kench. So this is 1 Bastion. Okay.
Yep. And 1 Astral Protection.
Yeah, well, Astral Protection not going to help against the Falling Comet.
Yeah, not going to help here, but...
But yeah, so now that is something that BBoom has to take into consideration. We can't just rip this Falling Comet and hope that it kills the Aphelios. We actually have to play around something like Bastion. And as long as we have that 1 copy, it's always going to be a risk playing that Falling Comet.
To an extent, BBoom Teemo is actually going to be able to rip off this Comet next turn because we'll have mana for the Atrocity to pop the Bastion if we absolutely need to. And there's nothing DK is going to be able to do at fast speed to kill whatever we throw at it. Probably just going to be this Dusk Petal or this Lunari Priestess. Just, make sure that the spell shield is popped.
Yeah, and honestly, seems like one of the better uses for Atrocity right now. Atrocity, I feel like most people, they see that card, they think, go face. We're going to end the game with this baby. But, yeah, no, in this case, the priority is getting rid of the Aphelios, and DK still right now owning the larger Aphelios. Looks like we're thinking about playing the Gravitum here, but we're going to go with the Star Shaping first. I mean, is this... Oh, do we have another... We don't have another... Okay. We're actually grabbing the Supernova even without the additional Celestial card yet. That's how much we value this removal, apparently.
That's a little dicey.
Yeah.
I don't think there's actually an insane amount of Invoke in DK's deck. If I saw this correctly, it was like just Star Shapings and Solari Priestess.
We actually, BBoom did not play the Falling Comet on the Aphelios either. I don't know if you just caught that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected it to go on the Tom Kench.
Yeah, so valuing removing the TK a little bit more than the Aphelios, but this one going to get stunned, which is going to open up DK to what looks like a decent size attack here. We'll see if BBoom does decide to go in or not. And these 2 Atrocities are still kind of just going to chill in hand for a little bit too. I mean, both players at 20. Nobody's going to lose the game anytime soon. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth, kind of resource trading and management here.
I'm really surprised by the Supernova grab, just because looking at DK's list, there's 2 Solari Priestess and 2 Star Shaping left in the deck. So we've only got 4 Invoke cards remaining, and you can't play Supernova and Star Shaping all in the same turn. So Really curious to see how DK plans to utilize this. Maybe just hoping for a high roll situation where, we find that and then we can get a big enough tempo swing off of this supernova. But
Mhm.
I think I would have liked to see him play a little bit more for the immediate and go for something like that Great Beyond.
Well, the other thing to take into consideration, I think, too, is that this game, with both players having Aphelios, this game is definitely going to go on a little while, right? So
I don't know about that.
you don't think so?
Not when BBoom Teemo is playing atrocities and can just start invoking larger celestials, and then you can stun them all you want, but I just have to chuck 2 destroyers at your face and the game ends.
Yeah, I guess, that is a good point, Boulevard. I mean, BBoom is going to have access to the Celestials a lot more frequently than DK will, especially if we already, used one of our choices on something like Supernova.
Yeah,
Which we had Great Beyond as an option, too, when DK pulled those up.
and barring Hush, you actually can't throw out a Gravitum onto one of the spell shielded Celestials. You have to pop that spell shield at burst speed with Hush specifically before they can get in the attack. And I assume that BBoom Teemo is going to be playing around the Gravitum or, whatever you need to pop the spell shield into the Gravitum and be able to get through those attacks. And it only takes 1 attack and an atrocity. You have minimal healing. You've already used one of your star shapings. Yes, you've got the 3 guiding touch, but because BBoom Teemo is like a dedicated invoke deck with this Mountain Scryer, these Celestials, we're talking 13, 14 attack Great Beyonds here.
And that could be a pretty big threat here in just a bit. So we'll see if we get to that point, or if DK strategy will work out. Like I was saying, maybe we're just going for a little bit later of a game here with that Supernova, because we still don't have a way to play it. So we do have to wait a little while before this actually gets ripped off.
I think my concern with DK's play here is that it's not even like a late game strategy. It's I'm hoping I draw another invoke spell down the line, and if I do, then I get the payoff. But I think taking more immediate value would have been, I mean, on average, probably the better play. Obviously, if he had top decked a star shaping the next turn, this Supernova would probably look really good. But I don't think the odds of that are in his favor.
Yeah, and speaking of top decks, that is also not a star shaping, just another Tom Kench. I will say we grabbed the shakedown off the Burblefish, so if anything big Celestials that have spell shields comes out, I mean, we will have the shakedown to pop some of those spell shields, and then we'll have the follow-up, possible Gravitum or something like that to go ahead and stun them. So, I mean, not a bad pickup there, but really not liking DK's spot too much here. I mean, like you said, that double atrocity, it's slowly but surely going all the way to the left of the hand there for BBoom, meaning we are waiting to unload those most likely in 1 turn for a victory. And it's just a matter of, like you said earlier, Boulevard, getting that star shaping, maybe even the Living Legends off that's in the hand of BBoom, and grabbing something like a Great Beyond Destroyer. Generally speaking, as we've talked about before, usually it's the Destroyer that's chosen. With an 11/11 Aphelios, probably more likely to be the Great Beyond here.
I don't mind the shakedown solely because if you really want to, it does give you the option to challenge your opponent's Aphelios with your Aphelios. And you do have the Hush on backup just in case you need to trade that to protect yours. But maybe the reason we don't see DK go for something like that is respecting like a Hush plus a Pale Cascade.
And here's the attack on the side of DK. Basically saying, all right, you have to offer up your Aphelios as a blocker or you take 11 to the face. There is a Hush here that would prevent this. There's also a Hush on the side of DK. The Aphelios would effectively end up trading at that point. And wow, all right, BBoom just going to go ahead, take the 11 to the face, go down to 9. And DK doesn't have as much reach as BBoom has with those atrocities. So not really too worried about going down to 9, especially with the star shaping in hand.
Ooh, and we get a Destroyer that we can play this turn, SJW. But this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't know if you want to play it this turn. I'm not sure where the Aphelios guns are currently lined up, but generally you want to play this, only give your opponent 1 priority sequence to interact with the spell shield, and then go in for the attack. But honestly, I'm not sure if this Destroyer even contests the Aphelios at the moment.
No, it doesn't, which leads me to believe I see a crescendum in the hand of BBoom. Maybe we phase that into a Gravitum. And then maybe we just end up stunning the Aphelios and going in for the attack with the Destroyer, and that sets us up for lethal with the Atrocity. That seems like a lot to happen and a lot to go right, though, just for us to potentially have lethal. And we can see, too, on the side of DK, we have the Shakedown plus the Hush. So we'll always have that 4 mana burst response to kind of prevent that excess damage coming in from the Destroyer.
Yeah. But, I mean, with 2 Atrocities in hand, we still got the Living Legends as well. I gotta say, I'm still a fan of BBoom Teemo's position, especially as we see him, just constantly healing up all the damage that was taken by that Aphelios. We even find another Invoke here with the Solari Priestess that we can get down in the same turn as the Destroyer, start to free up some of that hand space, build towards more late-game Celestials, because at the moment, okay, DK finally finds his secondary Invoke.
Man, it took him long enough. I don't know. I guess I was going to say, is that too late? But it honestly might not be. I mean, this game is still pretty stalemated right now. And I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, Boulevard, but I feel like the later the game goes, I feel like BBoom is going to have a greater advantage just because of the excess invokes that BBoom has in deck. Like, whoever has more invokes or more celestial cards, I feel like, generally speaking, has an advantage the longer the game goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there's not as much finishing power on the side of DK as you had mentioned. So not only do we have less ways to find these large late-game threats, but we don't get to win as immediately with them. Even if BBoom Teemo was the one with less Invoke in their deck, as long as they have the Atrocities in hand, they're going to feel pretty good about their position. But DK just gets to slam Celestials into Celestials until we run out of cards. And even if we get to throw a Falling Comet or a Supernova at it, there's a decent chance that BBoom Teemo just throws that Celestial at our face in response, and the damage is done.
It looks like in the meantime, we're going to get another gun here. We do have a Falling Comet in hand now as well. So DK effectively being able to obliterate 3 units. So it looks like from the start, from the get, DK's strategy was, all right, I know BBoom is going to go ahead and try to get these large Celestials. I'm just going to get some large responses for all these large Celestials. But see, I don't know if I like that plan, Boulevard, because at the end of the day, I feel like DK is going to run out of answers well before BBoom runs out of threats.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing the acquired taste here instead of the shakedown. We could shake down Supernova, and I think that's probably one of DK's best plays for the turn. There's no counterplay to that right now, but instead we are just going to take the 10 damage.
Well, we could also still pop the Spell Shield, hush it, and kill... Oh, no, never mind. The Aphelios is stunned. I was going to say block with the Aphelios, but that's not going to be an option.
And even then, BBoom Teemo still has Hush Man of his own.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think at this point DK can even really risk losing the Aphelios. You kind of... Both players at this point, I think, are just like, all right, we're both going to keep this giant Aphelios on board, and we're going to have guns every turn. We need to just play around it. And here's the acquired taste you were talking about. And it looks like now we're actually going to go for the Supernova on the Aphelios. Yep, and the Destroyer. This is definitely a pretty big swing for DK.
The damage is done, though, and DK is not actually representing any damage on the following turn currently. That's the thing about Aphelios. We just used the Overwhelm gun, so we're not going to be able to get back to that next turn. And then, BBoom Teemo just gets to throw down another big Celestial, but it looks like he's actually digging for the Supernova. It grabs it immediately.
Yeah, wow, that was that was a snap decision. And unlike DK a little bit earlier, BBoom has plenty of Celestials to pair with the Supernova. So this is, it's already actually online with the Traveler in hand. So we could just rip it this turn if we wanted to. Not sure. I mean, I guess Tom Ketch and Aphelios would be pretty good options, but we'll see what DK decides to do first with the turn here.
I mean, DK can open attack, and that doesn't accomplish anything. If you can further develop, then you know that Supernova is a possibility that can come out. I mean, I don't see how DK actually turns it around from this position, barring this star shaping, finding a Great Beyond that just somehow goes unanswered by everything that BBoom Teemo can throw out for the remainder of the game. But even then, you're relying on BBoom Teemo low rolling both that Traveler and that Living Legends and not finding an Atrocity target to kill you around the Great Beyond.
Yeah, I that seems like a tall task too. I mean, low rolling, not just a star shaping, but also a card that could theoretically get you 10 Celestials to choose from. It's probably going to be more like 5 or something in that range when it comes down to it. But, I mean, hey, it looks like we're actually going to use the shakedown on offense, though. So this would force... I mean, this is not lethal. We could still technically, on the side of BBoom, take this damage. If we don't want to take this damage, this does force out a defensive hush, which is definitely a win for DK. It always feels good getting a hush in a trade like this as opposed to some sort of card advantage trade.
Yeah, it's a matter of how risky do you want to play with it, because you do know that DK does still have, that small amount of invoke, however small it is, it does still have the possibility of these spell shielded threats like the Destroyer, like the Great Beyond, and you can just die if you're at 1 to literally anything sneaking through.
Wow. Yeah,
I
we're
like
gonna.
I like the confidence out of BBoom Teemo.
Not worried at all, Boulevard. Is this confidence one of the reasons why he was your pick? Is that why? Just a confident player.
I don't know much about this player. I know a little bit about Team UCG, but not a lot. But he was the UCG team player with the best name. So.
Yeah. All right, facts, science. That's science, ladies and gentlemen.
Sometimes you just gotta roll with it.
All right, another Aphelios, though, going to come down. So that's going to be a pretty big pickup for BBoom. We also have the Great Beyond in hand, though. So it is very much looking like, at the end of the day, this is going to come down to Great Beyond, Atrocity. And the problem is, too, with the Great Beyond, I mean, we can pop the Spell Shield pretty reliably with this Acquired Taste, so that's going to feel nice. We do even still have the Hush on backup. But the Falling Comet is slow, and Atrocity can just be played in response to that. So assuming that that is the case, we need to play the Hush in response to that, to Hush the Great Beyond, to deal less damage. It's just, it looks like no matter which way you spin this, BBoom is just going to win out on whatever card exchange happens between those Atrocities.
So I think what happens here is Teemo throws down this Great Beyond, we attack, or rather it gets popped by... either Crescendum or Acquired Taste, we attack, it gets hushed, we block it with Aphelios, and then, or even the Tahm Kench, probably actually the Tahm Kench, because you don't want BBoom Teemo to turn around and just hush your Aphelios right back, which is what would happen to it.
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, you could play Crescendum here, I guess, but you're never going to get DK to really expend more mana than is needed, because no matter what, DK basically is required to assume that there's an Immortal Fire or Great Beyond or something in hand. So yeah, BBoom's just going to go ahead and plop that bad boy down. And it's already at 12. It is representing lethal. Obviously, we see the star shaping in DK's hand, so we would be able to heal outside of the range of that for now.
I think Crescendum actually would have been lethal. Because the only target in BBoom Teemo's... Oh, never mind. So I was thinking the only... target in BBoom Teemo's deck is Sky Shadows, but there's actually not a Nightfall card for you to behold to get your spell mana back. So there's no way to use this double temple to actually turn the Atrocity online, and get it down in response to whatever DK is trying to do to pop your spell shield.
That would have definitely been interesting if that was the play. Probably not something that DK would have been prepared for either, but yeah. We are where we are at now. We are popping the spell shield like we mentioned previously. Pretty much knew that was going to happen. Gravitum is going to prevent the elusive attack from coming through too. But again, this is really just preventing the inevitable. Like, we're just stalling. And what we're stalling for, I don't know. Because there's really no way to win.
To eventually sneak through and attack with something. But we're going to see the Crescendum now. This is going to allow us to get down the Traveler as well this game. Wait, we got our mana back? Oh, we have Pale Cascade. I forgot that's a Nightfall card. Never mind, take it all
there is
back.
the Nightfall card. Okay, so we actually do have that exact play that you just mentioned. We still have 5 mana available, though, so...
Yeah.
Actually, it's only at 14. So, theoretically, it could have happened. It could have happened, but it didn't work out.
And now, actually, DK might be eyeing that Traveler and saying, this, I'm looking at the attack points, I'm looking at the health of my Tahm Kench, I'm seeing that these numbers don't line up, maybe I can go for it, but is still going to play respectfully of the Pale Cascade.
Yeah, it might have been nerfed down to +1 attack, but doesn't reduce the amount of times people have to play around that bad boy.
And, there's actually a really good read on the side of DK that your opponent has Pale Cascade because they just got back Sky Shadow mana. And I think the only Nightfall cards in the main deck are... so we've got... Oh, no, there's Diana's as well. I forgot there were Diana's in here. We just haven't seen them. Diana, Aphelios, Pale Cascade, and Lunari Priestess. So, an okay read that there's a Pale Cascade.
Yeah, and there's actually, I honestly almost forgot the Sky Shadows effect completely. Not that it gives you the spell mana, but that you have to behold a Nightfall card. There's not a whole lot of behold Nightfall in the game right now.
I think that might be the only one.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think it is the only one. So, all right. So we have the 2 elusive stuns. So this is what you were talking about, Boulevard. maybe we're trying to sneak through this attack here with the Immortal Fire. BBoom is at 6. We don't have a way to heal. There is Atrocity mana available. Immortal Fire does have 2 lives, but we do have the Hush.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Hush wins out, as per usual. This card.
That's kind of its job. And,
Yeah.
you know, there is this, like, scary prospect that DK, or that BBoom Teemo, rather, could go for lethal here with a Pale Cascade into Atrocity for Exactsies. And actually still has that available, thanks to all the spell mana gotten back from the Hush. But I don't think he's going to go for that. I think he's going to be a lot more in the path of, let me just Supernova everything out of the way and then go in with all of my units.
Yeah, and this just proves that. I'm not going to go ahead. That's a really good pickup. If we thought there was going to be problems popping spell shields earlier with these acquired tastes and stuff, this is just going to make it that much harder for DK to really remove these elusive units. Yep. Yeah, and we're going to Moonglow up the Great Beyond here. Again, this is just the inevitable. And you know, just to go back to Hush real quick too, we see this all the time now. Like Hush is the card that you have to keep the entire game. Like you have to have that card in your hand all game and actually not play it. It does more not playing the card. Probably, well, actually, no, that's a lie because it does a lot when you actually play the card. But I just feel like holding it. We see so many players hold it for so long, and it's for exactly this. We finally get to that threshold in the game where something's got to give. It is giving, and then that's where the Hushes get ripped out because they're kind of like your get out of jail free card. But unfortunately, DK's only got one of those, and it's not gonna save him for much longer.
And, you know, that Gravitum was used to pop the spell shield, so we do still have the attack with the Great Beyond, and DK finally finds that Bastion that I think BBoom Teemo was so scared of for so long, but I'm trying to think if there's actually a way for DK to survive this and stop the double Atrocity from just ever being lethal. That Hush pickup is absolutely massive. And,
okay, I guess we're going to go with the Living Legends. Why not a second Great Beyond?
God. So we can actually Great Beyond and Hush the Immortal Fire.
Yep.
But instead we're going to Spell Shield up this Great Beyond first, and I think that's going to have to force the Hush out of DK.
Yeah, we got to do it now before the Spell Shield hits, if that's the case. I mean, we could technically play the Acquired Taste, pop Spell Shield, that we still have the Hush anyways, but there's really no reason to do that. You just save yourself 2 mana.
BBoom Teemo could actually throw out an Atrocity in response to your Acquired Taste while the Spell Shield is still there.
Yep.
DK is running 3 Hush, so if he had double Hush, then that might actually be the blowout of, you know, I've expended all of your mana for the turn, I got to kill your Great Beyond, it didn't kill me, but I don't know if DK's really that worried about something like that. You do know that there are only 2 real cards in DK's hand right now, but it looks like we are going for the... Not what I expected. Take a cost reduction on this Great Beyond and Atrocity.
Something about getting the second Great Beyond. I just saw it. And I'm like, we have to play both Great Beyonds. Like that's what you do. You see 2 Great Beyonds, you play 2 Great Beyonds, and that's what BBoom's going for. And I gotta say, reducing the cost of Atrocity, we see this a lot, Boulevard. Reducing the cost of cards like that is super, super important because people are always playing around certain mana break points for specific cards, like 6 for Atrocity, 9 for Ruination, 7 for Vengeance, whatever it is. Now we have 5 mana Atrocity, so we could go down to 5 mana very specifically, and that might bait DK into playing something. I don't think it's going to matter regardless because we just have so many options, but...
Yeah, and BBoom Teemo just has lethal at this point. We can play both Atrocities next turn because of the double Veiled Temple and the Pale Cascade to get us back up there. DK only has, I think, like 1 healing spell left in deck. And both Great Beyonds are actually going to be lethal because the Double Veiled Temple procs... Oh, no, they'll only go onto the 20 attack one at this point, not the 18-18. So we are just shy of being able to one-shot our opponent with either Atrocity. But even... I mean, the only thing that's going to stop it is a Hush, and that means 8 damage still comes through.
Yeah, Gravitum going to get played onto the Great Beyond here. And I'm going to throw it out there. I mean... I feel like the writing's been on the wall for quite some time now, Boulevard. Like we kind of predicted this a few turns ago where we were just like, all right, everything's even on board. I mean, hell, there's even 2 Veiled Temples on both sides of the field. And we had 2 Aphelios on board for most of the game, 1 on each side. But at the end of the day, BBoom having these additional invoke cards, these additional celestial cards, we can see that starting to finally take a toll on DK. We have 2 Great Beyond on field. We even have a Silver Sister on field. And all DK has to show is an Immortal Fire. And I'm sorry, Immortal Fire does not take on 2 Great Beyonds very well. Mind Meld does.
That's definitely the biggest mind meld I've ever seen.
Yeah, yep. Oh, yeah.
And we're going to go for the Overwhelm, but lo and behold, BBoom Teemo has 3 answers in hand. We have Kill You, and Hush the Ophelio.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say one of the ones that's chosen has to do with killing him. I'm just going to go out on a limb there. Yeah, and honestly, I got to say, though, I am impressed with this last push from DK. Really playing. I'm not sure if DK was playing to this the entire time, but getting this Overwhelm paired with something like Mind Meld is definitely a way to win this matchup, I think, if you're able to get it to that point. The problem is there's always going to be so many tools for BBoom to play more responsively, I think, than DK, because this Mind Meld is a very slow card. It's a slow speed spell. And unfortunately for DK, not going to be able to do it for him there.
Astute observation, SJW, as always.
Hey, man, I try to help people out. What can I say? If you guys didn't know. Hey, technically there is a new spell speed that's coming out, okay? So we gotta clarify these things, Boulevard. Just trying to educate a little bit, all right? All right, with that said, we actually have Game 3 about to get started here between BBoom and DK. So let's go ahead and head on into Game 3, the semifinals. And now it's looking like Lee Sin again. Lee Sin, very, very popular deck. And actually, yeah, we do have the deck list for this one. So I am curious, BBoom here with this Lee Sin build, if it's anything crazy. I mean, we have the Veiled Temples, which a lot of people are starting to adopt with this Lee Sin deck. Otherwise, everything pretty standard from what we're used to seeing. There is 1 copy of Sonic Wave. And then, like we said, this is more so standard, I think, to the Asian regionals anyways. Or was BBoom the only one playing 1 copy of Dragon's Rage? I thought there was a couple people.
Every UCG member that we've seen has played 1 copy of Dragon's Rage.
Okay, so this is a Team UCG tech, a tech of choice. But I like it. I like it. The idea of having to play around an off-turn Dragon's Rage when you don't have the attack token it matters. I mean, because generally when you play against Lee Sin, you're only worried about losing the game to that OTK on your opponent's attack turn, not on your attack turn. So it's definitely something additional to think about there. So we'll see if it's going to come into play in this game.
And this actually kind of feels like a matchup where DK should be advantaged. One of the reasons that you play Tahm Kench is so that it can eat the Lee Sin and then just kind of sit around and never do anything again. But honestly, with a double Veiled Temple start, I don't know if DK's ever going to have the opportunity to eat that Lee Sin. But we do have Sunburst in the opening hand as well. So it's looking like an uphill battle for BBoom Teemo to start things off here. The Aphelios already established for DK. Plenty of answers for Lee Sin, and no Lee Sin in sight just yet.
Yeah, wow. This is a super quick start for DK. DK has got to be feeling wicked good right now. I mean, not only do we have the Aphelios and the Veiled Temple down early, we also have the Crescendum with that nice 3/4 Badger Bear with Challenger, otherwise known as Pablo. Going in for fate, and this is an insane start. This has got to be like the dream start versus this Lee Sin deck, right?
More or less. I mean, okay, we've got the Deny that saves Lee from the Sunburst, but we still need the Lee, and we're still a couple turns away from okay, there's the Lee.
Okay.
But I don't think we can play it next turn.
Man, Blind Monk actually showing up to the party on time for once. Like this, if there was ever a time where he needed to show up early, this has got to be it, because right now DK has such a good hand. BBoom cannot afford to not draw what they need. Actually,
we could have played the Lee Sin just because, like, we could deep med back into 4-mana to be able to play the Deny, but Eye of the Dragon does seem like a much safer tool. And thanks to the double Guiding Touch, we are a little bit healthier than we previously were. Going to be able to, buff up this unit as well and find a decent amount of cancel spells. So the Aphelios gun's going to be pretty unusable for quite some time.
Wow. This now, so for as good of a start as DK had, things suddenly flipped completely 180 for BBoom. I mean, when we finally do get Lee Sin down, which it may very well be this turn, Probably not. I think both Veiled Temples actually already went off, so we're probably going to want to hold off a little bit, especially with something like that Boxtopus on the side of DK's field. But once we finally, if we can just live through another attack turn and we get this Lee Sin down, not only is he going to be big and bad, he is going to have a lot of protection backing him up to deny, to notify, and a hush. Damn, this is now suddenly looking pretty rough for DK after that really, really good start. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're just short of lethal here. And I think, yeah, BBoom is going to see that and go, yeah, sure, I'm going to live.
Does BBoom really just get to set up a lethal here? I mean, the Lee Sin is not super close to leveling, and our hand is still extremely reactive.
We have Sonic Wave, though.
Yeah, Sonic Wave is a big part in getting this online, as well as that Deep Med going to be able to reduce cost next turn. But I think you do just have to one-shot next turn, and I don't know if you've got that available in hand. Of course, there are still a lot of tools left to be used to see what they actually get for us, you know, between the Deep Med and the Pale Cascade, but I don't know. It's a little dicey for BBoom Teemo.
Well, and this is exactly why we've seen the adoption of Veiled Temple. Like, it's allowing, you know, we're on turn 7. Lee Sin's coming down. It's not leveled. He's not even really that close to being leveled. Now, can we level him? Sure. But generally, we're a lot more limited because of, we played him this turn. That's 5 mana. We only have 5 mana left. We don't typically have enough mana to play enough spells to get into the OTK range with the next attack token, which is going to be coming up right here in a second. Now with Veiled Temples adding what's going to be 8 mana over the next 2 turns, by the time we go into an attack, that's actually enough to set up everything we need. Zenith Blade, Sonic Wave, all that good stuff. So, you know, depending on how BBoom goes for this, suddenly we just have OTK in hand if we need it.
And I think what DK is really agonizing over here is saying, you know, I have the Acquired Taste, which in theory is going to let me kill this Lee Sin, but if there is notifies or denies in BBoom Teemo's hand, then I'm really just helping him get closer towards that Lee Sin level up.
I don't mind, because of that, I don't mind the play from DK. Probably recognizing, okay, there's denies and notifies in hand, so I don't want to allow the free play of the spell. But unfortunately, we have the Zenith Blade. We don't care about the Day Broken effect. We just want the overwhelm on Lee Sin, because we know, on the side of BBoom, Lee Sin ain't going nowhere anytime soon.
Yeah, and with the double Veiled Temple proc already going off, the only challenge left is, can you level the Lee Sin? And as you had mentioned, it's gotta happen. And here we get to see a Notify that's going to make it even easier. That, I believe, is the second spell of the turn. So now Deep Med going to be 3 mana on the following turn. We're going to get a Dragonling, and I'm curious if BBoom Teemo would have fired off something like a Pale Cascade just to get that reduced cost Deep Med next turn. But now with 15 mana available to play with, I have to imagine that BBoom Teemo's just got this, and I don't see anything in DK's hand to stop it. Needed a hush, and just doesn't have it.
Yeah, we actually even have it was already discounted, the Deep Med. So regardless, I mean, we have so many spells. We have so much mana because of these 2 Veiled Temples. We're at 11 attack. Like, how quickly that combo was assembled blows my mind.
We've got to draw Hush off Salvage, and DK is playing 3 copies of the card.
Yeah, that's definitely a... Wait, 3 copies of Salvage?
Hush.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a second. I was like, Salvage is already kind of a weird choice, but 3 of it? Yep, and no Hush.
Oh my god, imagine if the Hush was the second card.
That would have felt really bad, yeah.
Especially since we could have stopped it, but...
Or if it was a tossed card, right?
Yeah, I mean, but just out of nowhere, BBoom Teemo picks it up and steals the game.